Hey guys, what's up? It's Matt here, and in this video lesson today I want to share with you some ideas for playing some bebop phrases, particularly over dominant seventh chords, for example like a G seventh chord. And if you're new to jazz and are getting into the music and are looking to explore it, one of the challenges can be finding the right vocabulary and the ideas that actually fit that style of music, which is something that I struggled with when I first started playing jazz. And one thing that I learned was that I didn't really know what to do over the dominant seventh chord, particularly like a G seventh chord or any seventh chord for that matter. I didn't know exactly what to play or what kind of fit. So in this lesson, I want to share with you some approaches you can take to play into a dominant seventh chord in a traditional jazz bebop sound, or even in like a funk fusion kind of sound. You'll hear some of these ideas being used as well. So guys, if you like this video, please like this page, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more content like this, and let's just dive in. So the first thing is we're looking at a G7 chord. And in order to get the sound that fits this chord, the first thing that we look at, or that I thought of, is the Mixolydian scale. So we have G Mixolydian is going to fit over a G7 chord. So G Mixolydian equals G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G. And the intervals of this scale are root. We got the major second is the A. We've got the major third is the B. We've got the perfect fourth is the C. We've got the D is the perfect fifth. We've got the E is the sixth. We've got the F is the flat seven. And we've got the G, which is the root. So these notes fit over a G7 chord. And we can go up an octave if we want to venture up an octave. So the first thing is the Mixolydian scale that fits over a dominant seventh chord. So the first thing is just getting comfortable with the Mixolydian scale, and you can just start by experimenting with that scale and just playing over a dominant seventh chord vamp. Now, the other thing we want to know is the notes within a G7 chord. So we can arpeggiate the chord as well. So we're going to use the scale degrees, the Mixolydian scale, plus the arpeggios or the chord tones, which are going to be this. So for a G7 arpeggio, we've got G as the root, we've got B as the major third, we've got D as the perfect fifth, we've got F as the flat seven, and we've got G as the root. That's one octave of a G7 arpeggio. Now we can go to the next octave, G, B, D, F, and G. So we've got the arpeggio that we can combine with the scale, the Mixolydian scale. Okay, so you can experiment with those two things, but for maybe some more structured ideas, one thing I would recommend is trying to play the arpeggio off of each note within the arpeggios here. So if it's G7, maybe you loop that 1 and 2 and 3, 4. You know, you kind of repeat that about 8 times or so off of the root. Then you go from the third. About 4 times off of the third. Then you go from the fifth. You know, and so on. Then off the flat seven. And then we're back to the root again. So root to root. You also want to go in descending order, so from root down, or from flat 7 down. So you're just kind of looping each arpeggio off of each chord tones. That way you have a different starting point within your ideas, and it allows you to flow through your ideas when you're improvising. When it comes to the scale, one thing I can think of is to sequence the scale to generate some more melodic content. So sequencing meaning applying a certain pattern of notes to the scale throughout the scale to create more of a melody. So one common sequencing pattern would be playing it in 4 notes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, then start from the second note of the scale and play up 4 notes from that. So this time from the A. Then 4 notes up from the B. 4 notes up from the C. 4 notes up from the D. And so on. So playing 4 notes up from every note of the scale, and then in reverse direction, in descending order, 4 notes down. Then you start for the next note, next note, next note, and so on. So if you swing them, and then going backwards. That way you can get some dexterity in moving around using the scale, and if we combine that with the arpeggios, you start to have some ideas that actually fit pretty well over just the G7 chord. Okay, now the next thing I wanted to show you is something that's really important to jazz, which is something that I needed to learn in order to sound, I guess, like an authentic jazz player, was the idea of the bebop scale. So the bebop scale is really that mixolydian scale, that G mixolydian, but instead of just going right down the scale from G to F and then descending all the way through the scale, what happens in the bebop scale is we add a chromatic note, F down to F sharp, and then down to F. So root down to the major 7, down to the flat 7. Okay, so if we descend the scale with the bebop scale, we get that sound. So the thing about the bebop scale is, like, why do we use that chromatic note half-stepping down here? Well, it's the idea that in jazz, when you play phrases, those are referred to as lines a lot of time. And the idea with a line is you're playing a constant stream of eighth notes, or like a whole bar of eighth notes, if not more, maybe 2 bars or 3 bars. And when we play eighth notes with just the mixolydian scale descending, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and what happens is the scale starts on the root, but then the and beat starts on the flat 7, and beat 2 starts on the 6th, the and beat starts on the 5th, beat 3 starts on the 4th, the and beat is the B, is the 3rd, and then we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We've got the A is beat 4, and the and is G. So what's happening is all of the chord tones are falling on the upbeats, and that obscures the sound of the G7 chord. And so when we add the chromatic note, 1 and 2, that makes all the chord tones now fall on the downbeats. 1 and 2, there's the flat 7, and 3, there's the 5th, and 4, there's the 3rd, and 1, there's the root. So by adding the chromatic note, now all the chord tones in that scale, the G, the F, the D, the B, and the G, now now land on the downbeats. So now we hear that G7 sound more prominently because the chord tones are landing on the downbeats. So this is why we use the bebop scale to add that other note. Now the idea with the bebop scale is we want to descend the bebop scale from every chord tone within the G7 chord, or the dominant 7th chord. So we descend from the root, we descend from the 3rd, we descend from the 5th, we descend from the 7th, and then we're back to the root. So now we've got a descending line that we can play off of every chord tone using that bebop scale, which is a big component to the jazz vocabulary. Now the question from here is, after you practice that, just kind of running each pattern several times with a click. Then you run it from the 3rd, from the 5th, and so on. Just run each pattern off of each chord tone several times to get it under your fingers and in your ear. Then the question is, well, what about the non-chord tones? So what about like the A, the 2nd? So from there, what we have to do is generally play a quarter note. 1, because then all the downbeats will be the chord tones again. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. We end up on the B as the 3rd on beat 1. If we play it as 8th notes, then we end up playing all the chord tones on the upbeats, and it doesn't sound right or feels awkward. So on the 9th, the A, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, we play it as a quarter note. Then we loop that. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Okay, and then if we're playing from the C, the 4th, same thing, another quarter note. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. That way all the chord tones of G7 fall on the downbeats. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. If we don't, 1, and 2, and 3. That's a downbeat on the major 7. We don't want that. And 4, and... So like they don't line up right. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Okay, and then we can start from the 6th, which is the E, and play that as a quarter note. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. So then we want to run each one of these patterns off of the 9th, the 11th, and the 6th. And the idea by doing this is it gives us a pathway off of every single note that's related to this G7 that we can start an idea or a line on, so we can have a flow when we play improvised solos. And so when we're jamming out, with whatever, a track or jamming with the other musicians, and then we feel confident about what we're playing and we're in command and we like how we sound and feel. Okay, so guys, hope that helped today to give you some ideas of what to play over the G7 chord. If you like this, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. And if you want a copy of a PDF of this outlined, click the link below where you can get a copy of the PDF. And guys, really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.